The entire hangar went silent when the billionaire CEO laughed and placed $1 million bet on a broken-down jet. Hundreds of people stood watching as a tired single father in an old mechanic uniform stood beside the aircraft everyone else had already given up on. They expected him to fail. They expected him to walk away embarrassed. But 5 minutes later, something happened that changed the way everyone in that room saw him forever. Before we begin this inspiring story, if you believe kindness, second chances, and believing in people can change lives, take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel Beyond Single Dad for more emotional stories like this. The morning started like any other difficult day for Marcus Vale. The alarm on his old phone rang before sunrise, but he was already awake. The small apartment was quiet except for the sound of his daughter sleeping peacefully in the next room. Marcus sat on the edge of his worn-out couch, staring at the bills on the table and wondering how he would keep everything together. 3 years earlier, Marcus had been a respected aircraft mechanic at a small aviation company. He was known as someone who could repair almost anything with an engine. He understood machines like they were alive. He could hear a strange sound from a jet and know exactly where the problem was hiding. But life changed when his wife passed away unexpectedly, leaving him alone to raise their young daughter, Nora. The grief was unbearable, but Marcus knew he could not fall apart. Every morning, he prepared breakfast, packed school lunches, and made sure Nora never felt the weight of the struggles he carried silently. Because he needed a more flexible schedule, Marcus left his high-paying aviation job and started working small repair jobs around the city. He fixed old cars, generators, and farm equipment. The work was honest, but the money was barely enough. People saw him as just another struggling mechanic. They never saw the sacrifices behind his tired eyes. One afternoon, Marcus received a call from an old colleague named Corbin Hayes. Corbin worked at a private aircraft facility owned by one of the richest aviation companies in the country. He told Marcus there was a special project and they needed someone with real mechanical instincts. Marcus hesitated. He had not worked on a luxury jet in years. He worried he was not good enough anymore. But he thought about Nora's future and decided to take the opportunity. When Marcus arrived at the massive aircraft hangar, he felt like he had stepped into another world. The polished floors reflected the bright lights above. Expensive suits surrounded him. Executives walked around discussing millions of dollars as if they were simple numbers. In the center of the hangar was a private jet worth hundreds of millions of dollars. It was a beautiful aircraft, but it had a serious problem. The engines were not responding correctly, the electrical systems were unstable, and several teams of highly trained engineers had already failed to find the issue. Standing near the jet was the company's CEO, Vivian Arkwright. She was known as a brilliant businesswoman who had built an aviation empire from nothing. She was respected, but many people also feared her because she demanded perfection. When Marcus approached the aircraft, some people looked at his old work boots and simple mechanic clothes and quietly laughed. They believed someone like him did not belong in a place filled with private jets and million-dollar contracts. Vivian watched him carefully. She had spent weeks watching experts fail. She was frustrated and tired of promises. She wanted results. Marcus did not rush. He walked around the aircraft slowly, listening, observing, and studying every detail. He touched the metal surface, checked the systems, and looked at the information provided by the previous engineers. The room became impatient. Some people whispered that he was wasting time. Others believed he was only there because Corbin wanted to give an old friend a chance. Then Vivian made a bold decision. She smiled and told everyone that if Marcus could repair the jet, she would pay him $1 million. But if he failed, he would have to admit that he was not capable of fixing something beyond his experience. The room filled with laughter. To everyone watching, it was impossible. The greatest engineers in the company had already failed. How could a single father with an old toolbox succeed? Marcus looked at the aircraft again. He did not see a billion-dollar machine. He saw a problem waiting for someone willing to understand it. He opened his toolbox. Inside were simple tools that looked old compared to the advanced equipment around him. But those tools carried years of experience, memories, and determination. 5 minutes later, the impossible started happening. Marcus noticed something everyone else had missed. The issue was not a major engine failure. It was a tiny connection problem hidden deep inside the electrical system. Years of experience taught him that complicated problems were sometimes caused by the smallest details. He carefully removed a panel and found the damaged connection. The entire room became quiet. Engineers moved closer, surprised by what they were seeing. Marcus repaired the connection and restarted the system. The lights inside the jet came alive. The engine responded. The aircraft that had defeated entire teams of experts suddenly started working again. Nobody laughed anymore. The same people who had judged him moments earlier now stood in complete silence, watching him, and they underestimated do what they could not. But Marcus did not celebrate. He simply closed his toolbox and looked relieved. For him, it was never about the money. Later, when Vivian approached him, she expected him to talk about the $1 million reward. Instead, Marcus asked if the company could create more opportunities for skilled workers who had lost their careers because of difficult life situations. That surprised everyone. Vivian had met many talented people in her life, but she rarely met someone who achieved something incredible and still thought about helping others. She asked Marcus why he cared so much. The answer was simple. Marcus knew what it felt like to be invisible. He knew what it felt like when people judged someone's situation without understanding their story. The $1 million payment changed Marcus's life. He was able to buy a safer home for Nora, pay off his debts, and build a small workshop where he could teach young mechanics. But the biggest change was not the money. It was the respect. People who once ignored him now wanted to hear his story. Companies that once rejected him wanted his advice. But Marcus remained the same humble man who woke up every morning, packed his daughter's lunch, and reminded her that kindness was more valuable than success. Months later, Vivian visited Marcus's workshop. She saw young mechanics learning from him and realized something important. The greatest investments were not always machines, buildings, or technology. Sometimes the greatest investment was believing in a person. Marcus's story spread across the aviation world, but he never considered himself a hero. He believed everyone deserved one chance to prove what they could do. And that was the lesson everyone in the hangar learned that day. A person's worth is not measured by their clothes, their job title, or the struggles they carry. Sometimes the people who appear broken are the ones holding the strength to fix what everyone else has abandoned. As Marcus watched Nora grow up, he knew his hardest days had not been wasted. Every difficult moment had shaped him into someone stronger. Every rejection had prepared him for the moment when someone finally gave him a chance. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that one opportunity can change a person's entire life, please support this video by liking, sharing, and subscribing to Beyond Single Dad. Your engagement helps these inspiring stories reach more people who need hope. Before the story ends, write a comment saying I believe in second chances, because your words might inspire someone else who is still fighting their own silent battle. The world may not always notice the people who struggle quietly, but sometimes the person everyone doubts becomes the person everyone remembers. Marcus Vale walked into that hangar as a forgotten mechanic and walked out as proof that courage, kindness, and determination can repair more than just a broken machine. They can rebuild a life.